So if you've got some teenager who's bunkered down on a diet of just meat and rice or whatever and not having anything with vitamin C in it, it might be contributing to them having 5 bruises instead of 1, or their bruise being 5 centimeters instead of 1 centimeter. It can contribute to bruising and bleeding.
Welcome to Beyond the Count. I'm founder and CEO of ITP Australia and New Zealand and your host, Danielle Boyle. This is a space created for the ITP community by the ITP community, where we share real stories, expert insights and everything in between. Whether you're living with immune thrombocytopenia, supporting someone who is, or just curious about what life looks like beyond the bruises and the blood tests, you're in the right place. So whether you're driving, out for a walk, folding the laundry, or just sitting back and tuning in, let's dive in and go beyond the count. In this episode of Beyond the Count, I'm once again joined by Associate Professor Dr. Phil Choi, ITP Specialist and Haematologist. Today we're talking about reducing bleeding through nutrition. While most of us focus on the platelet count, this episode looks at what might be affecting your platelet function. Dr. Choi explains how vitamin C and vitamin K support clotting and how certain foods and supplements like alcohol, fish oil and turmeric could impair platelet function for some people. Let's get into it. Welcome back, Phil, for Fueling Your Health Part 2, where we're actually going to be talking about reducing bleeding through nutrition. So before we get started, let's do a quick recap on what we talked about in Part 1. We're talking about improving platelet function and platelet counts.
Absolutely, yeah. So obviously, a big part of being diagnosed with ITP is that your platelet counts are low. And so, well, what can I do to eat or drink, or what supplements can I take to make my platelet counts higher? But kind of the main reason why we care about platelets is whether we're bleeding or not, or how we can stop those little red spots or the blood blisters, or obviously the more serious bleeds that can happen in ITP. We never want to see those. Bleeding is the main thing that we're really trying to prevent by having a better platelet count. So this segment, we're going to focus on foods that we need to make sure we eat or avoid eating if bleeding is the biggest problem in your life. So this isn't so much worrying about the platelet count. This is worrying about, my God, I'm covered in a lot more bruises than what I thought I should be. Or I've got lots more bleeding noses than what I used to have for the same platelet count even. What can I do? Am I doing something wrong? Can I do something better?
And the other thing too to consider is that not every patient, bleeds at the platelet count of 30, right? So some patients are more prone to bleeding episodes and experiencing bleeding, whereas others don't. So this may not necessarily impact some of those other patients that don't necessarily have the bleeding symptoms that some of us do.
Yeah.
So when we talk about platelet count, what else do we need to think about when as opposed to the platelets?
Well, I always tell people bleeding or the prevention of bleeding, it's like the body's way of building a brick wall to stop you from bleeding. And in order to make a strong brick wall, I used to always tell people, well, you need bricks and you need mortar. And think of the platelets as the bricks. If you don't have enough bricks, then it's going to be hard to build a brick wall, right? So you're going to bleed more. But you also need the mortar. You need the sticky stuff between the platelets so that the platelets can stick together. And they're the clotting factors. So they're tiny little proteins that usually the liver makes. Something else that I didn't really consider much before until recently, though, is that if any of you out there are builders, or if you've seen builders, or you've seen brickies laying a brick wall, they don't just build a brick wall on some bit of sand or some mushy bit of dirt. They build it on a strong foundation, usually some kind of concrete footing, right? And that's actually what we build our blood clots on when we cut ourselves. We need collagen out there in our tissues or in our blood vessels from which we can build that brick wall. And a really important vitamin for building collagen is something called vitamin C. So a lot of you are probably old enough to remember in school learning about scurvy and how the old sailors who used to travel around the world used to have problems with something called scurvy until was it Captain Cook? Someone figured out
One of
that
them.
yeah, someone figured out that if you gave everyone an orange or half an orange a day, they would get enough vitamin C that they wouldn't get scurvy. One of the big symptoms of scurvy was bleeding, and particularly bleeding in the gums and bleeding in the mouth. So um, definitely vitamin C deficiency or not having enough vitamin C can contribute to more bleeding than usual. So if you've got some teenager who's bunkered down on a diet of just meat and rice or whatever and not having anything with vitamin C in it, it might be contributing to them having 5 bruises instead of one, or their bruise being 5 centimeters instead of 1 centimeter. If you get what I mean, it can contribute to bruising and bleeding.
Yeah, 2-minute noodles have a lot to answer for.
Thanks to our sponsor Sobe for their ongoing support of ITP Australia and New Zealand and our podcast Beyond the Count.
Another important vitamin that gives us the clotting factors, so that's the mortar in between those bricks, is a vitamin called vitamin K. And vitamin K is easy to remember because pretty much most of the green veggies that you can think of stacked with vitamin K. So broccoli, beans, spinach, asparagus, all those things, anything that's green usually has lots of vitamin K in it. And the liver really relies on vitamin K in order to put its finishing touch on the clotting factors that we then use to make that mortar mixture between the platelets. Specifically, the bricks themselves, you know how there are some bricks that are rough and looks like anything would stick to that brick, but then there are other bricks that are a bit shiny or don't look very sticky. So in the same way, platelets can be of differing quality, and there are foods and supplements that can affect the quality of platelets. So the biggest thing in I guess Western communities is often alcohol that can make platelets a little bit sleepy, a little bit less functional. Garlic and onions can also impact on platelet function, probably tiny amounts, so small that it's probably not going to make any noticeable difference to anyone. But on top of that, there are all these other herbs and spices like cumin, fenugreek, tamarind, turmeric, all these traditional spices that might come from, say, a curry or a subcontinental dish, but also a lot of health foods that are often actually used to improve circulation in Eastern societies like ginseng and ginkgo biloba, but also fish oil you'll see commonly used. These are all substances that have also been shown to slightly reduce platelet function. And you know what? It's probably partly why they're also good for other people who have problems with arteries being clogged up with cholesterol, because they don't want their platelets being too functional. Otherwise, they'll get strokes and heart attacks. So it's a balance. In your life, if you do have an issue where you're bruising a lot more than what you like, or you're bleeding more than what you like, and if you happen to be in a situation where you can make subtle changes to your diet, maybe these are some foods that you might choose to have a little bit less of. I don't think these are going to make or break your platelet count, or they're not going to make or break your experience of being in and out of hospital. But like I said, if you want to do absolutely everything to maximize your platelet function, these are substances that have been shown, at least in the laboratory, to affect platelet function. it might be that when we actually eat it as part of a big balanced meal, it doesn't actually affect it in any way that we can measure. There's also some other things like St. John's wort and chamomile tea that have also been shown to reduce platelet function. But again, whether it's going to affect you enough to notice, it's hard to say.
Well, and I remember turmeric a couple of years ago. There was the turmeric latte, and I think you have to actually consume quite a lot for it to really have a super impact, right?
Absolutely, yeah.
So a sprinkling here and there is not going to change the world.
I wouldn't be alarmed by it at all, even in someone with 0 platelets. I wouldn't say, don't eat this or don't eat that. But if you are someone, like I said, who feels like you are a bruiser and a bleeder and you want to do everything about it, these are things that have been shown in the laboratory to affect platelet function enough that when we as scientists tell people to do or organize platelet function tests, we actually give them a list of foods and medications to avoid, and these are foods that are on that list.
Yeah.
So we get them to stop eating these things before we do the platelet function testing, just to make sure that they're not affecting it.
Well, as a Hungarian, I don't think I can eradicate garlic or onions from my diet.
We're just going to have to accept the baseline level of reduced platelet function.
Yeah, sorry about that. But other things. I know that I personally I have changed some of the way that I eat, but I don't restrict things 100% anymore because of the ITP. So cross fingers. And I'm not as much of a bruiser or a bleeder now as what I used to be. So maybe that's got something to do with it.
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah. So these are just fun things to think about, but not necessarily you have to eliminate unless it's your it's your choice.
It's not a live and breathe Bible scenario here. It's there's no playbook, unfortunately, for ITP, so including diet. So which is exciting. But it's good to know how they impact and whether it's a positive or a negative. And I really do love the metaphor about the building blocks and building the wall with foundations, and really easy to understand, even for someone without a medical background like myself, and like a lot of patients as well. So absolutely fantastic, wonderful. The information in this episode is general in nature and not intended to replace individual medical advice. Always speak with your haematologist, GP, or healthcare team before making any changes to your treatment or diet. Every person's situation with ITP is different, and what works for one person may not be right for another. I hope you all got a lot out of today's episode. Before we wrap up, here are 4 key takeaways from our conversation with Dr. Phil Choi. Number 1, think beyond the count. Bleeding symptoms aren't always tied to how low your platelet count is. Platelet function matters as well, and food choices may help influence it. Number 2, support your foundation with vitamin C. Vitamin C helps build collagen, the foundation of a stable blood clot. Include citrus fruits, berries, capsicum, and leafy greens in your regular diet. 3, don't forget vitamin K. Found in leafy greens like spinach and broccoli, vitamin K helps your liver make the clotting factors that help platelets stick together. Number 4, some foods may reduce platelet function. Alcohol, fish oil, garlic, turmeric, and some herbal supplements may slightly impair how platelets work. You don't need to cut them out altogether, but if you're bruising and bleeding more than usual, it's worth having a chat with your doctor. And don't forget to download your free information sheets on diet and nutrition based on Dr. Choi's article at itpanz.org.au. Search Fueling Your Health in the news section to grab yours today. A big thank you to Dr. Choi for joining us today. This is part 2 of our Fueling Your Health series. Don't forget to listen to the other episodes on increasing platelet counts, immune system support, and managing side effects. If you're looking for support, join the ITP community at itpanz.org.au. While you're online, check out the latest edition of The Count, our quarterly magazine. Read some of the great patient stories we have in our news section. Download a huge range of treatment information, guidelines and more in our patient resources section, and know that you are not alone. We are here to support you. We are here to provide you and inform you with all of the latest information when it comes to immune thrombocytopenia. If you found this episode helpful, please share it with others in the ITP community, and don't forget to leave a review on the platform you're listening from. It helps others find Beyond the Count. We've got more expert conversations coming your way really soon, so hit the follow or subscribe button to stay updated. And thanks for tuning in and diving beyond the count with us.